Welcome to Deep Deck. Gonna have a creative conversation.
Hello, and welcome to Tape Deck, a podcast where I, artist-writer Declan Shelby, have a creative conversation, namely with a past or present collaborator in comics. My collabro this episode is Gerry Duggan. Gerry Duggan says, as a kid, I stayed up late reading comics while waiting for David Letterman. This is the result. X-Men, Batman, Deadpool, Infinity Wars, Guardians of the Galaxy, Star Wars, Hulk, Nova, Savage Sword of Conan, and Savage Avengers, as well as his creator-owned collaborations for Image Comics, like Falling in Love, On the Path to Hell, Analog, Dead Eyes, The Infinite Horizon, The Dark Room. Oh, God. And also, Gerry and I worked on Deadpool together. So, hey, Gerry, how's it going?
What's up, buddy? How are you?
Yeah, he couldn't make that easy for me. No, you can't just be like, no. Gerry Duggan is a writer of comics.
Well, once I hear that you're gonna give me the opener, you're gonna have to read the full scroll.
Well, done. Anyway, so Gerry and I know each other years and years and years, but I think, met, if I'm right, we met the first time sitting. I had a table at New York Comic Con, and you were sitting next to what's his name, Rick Remender.
Yes.
And I think we just got chatting, and then within a year we were working on Deadpool together. Is that right?
That is also my recollection, and true, really, of so many of my collaborators and the other friends that I made along the way. Going back to, I think my first San Diego was 99. It might have been 98, but I think it was 99. And, at that time, you're meeting folks that are going to be your contemporaries. They might be your collaborators. And I thought, what a cool thing we're going to have. We're all going to come up together, and we helped, that was at a time when Robert was like hand selling Battle Pope and that sort of thing. It seems like a million years ago. It was only 500,000 years ago. But those conventions really are so important in terms of building a community.
And then it turned out you all ended up to be enemies.
And Robert could at any time blow up this house like I'm in a Lethal Weapon movie.
He's probably got a satellite, he'd take any of us out. I think that's one thing, like, you don't always get to work with somebody you like, clearly. But like I would say, like, you're probably the writer I worked with that I'm the best friends with afterwards. And it's not a slight against anybody else. It's just naturally.
We all talk about that, Deck, how hard you are on us. Yeah. How hard it is to have the relationship survive. No, I knew we were going to be friends from the jump. And then we just, right away whether, you're going to jive with someone's sense of humor. And then obviously it was our thrill. My memory too of the Deadpool collaboration when it happened, I think our editor, Jordan D. White, at the time said, we'd like to put Declan on the next arc because it was supposed to be my last arc. Right. I was like, let's get out of here. And I was like, oh my goodness, having Declan on that last arc would be wonderful. I think he'd be perfect for that story. And so I think we added another issue as a buffer. So Scott Koblish did 12 and 13 or 13 and 14, somewhere in there. Basically, our inventory issue, became 2 issues. So we actually got more. We got 2 issues out of a bad guy from the 70s called the White Man. It was a throwback to and this was Jordan's idea, this clever idea to. It solved production problems for us, but it also ended up giving the artists, our collaborators, more authorship. We could basically guarantee an artist, or come close to guaranteeing, that you could do a whole trade by building in what we were calling inventory issues. So Scott Koblish did this. He aped the bronze 70s Marvel. We did Power Man, Iron Fist, and Deadpool. And Deadpool had an afro, and we were always trying to pull one thing out that would become the new thing in in the next arc, and it actually is really kind of Mr. Showy. Brian was coming from that world where the Mr. Show guys, Bob and David, they were working oftentimes harder on what the connecting tissue. They would spend as much time doing the little sketches between sketches than they would the actual full sketches. So we were just trying to make this comic book make sense and give artists time to draw it and have authorship. And you came in and you blew the doors off, and then I quit, and then I unquit.
Yes, I mean, I feel like you did that a few times. I want to ask you about that later on, but I will say I'm not sure. I think I told you this. When I was offered Deadpool, I was on Venom at the time, and yes. I wasn't a fan. I wasn't a fan of Deadpool. Just in general, I just was like, whatever. I don't really care. But I had read I guess you had like maybe 8 issues out by then at that stage.
Yes.
I was really liking it. I was like, it's a cool book, but I don't know. I'm not too hot on Deadpool, so I said no. And then I found out afterwards.
Yes.
Because
I was on before you even got there, which is perfect.
Well, no, it's because I was on Venom, and I thought it was fairly safe there, and I was enjoying it. And it was at the time I was trying to make a headway on a book and stay on a book to kind of be recognized.
Of course.
But then, so I was like, no, I'd only do it if I got like Jordi Belair to color it and me to do my own covers. Like I made demands which I'd never made before because I was always such a good boy. I would just do whatever you want. And then they're like, okay, well, I think it was Tony Moore was doing covers, so Jordan was like, well, if Tony Moore is going to keep doing covers, we're going to keep Tony Moore doing covers. I was like, fair enough, but if not, I'd like, sure. But and then I know, and by the way, I don't know if you know this, but Venom's cancelled. I was like, what? Go Deadpool! Deadpool number 1.
That's so funny. Yeah,
but I remember straight away when I got the script that it was just so. I didn't mean to get into Deadpool straight away, but may as well, I guess.
That's fine.
Loved the scripts were great.
Good.
Even like say the character wasn't one like I was dying to work on, the tone of the story and like the emotional through line through it all. I was like, wow, it's like felt like it was written for me, and it couldn't have been because you didn't know me well enough.
No. Yeah. I'm glad you dug it. That particular story, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, was, I think that ended up being a really special story. And I think you and Jordy have everything to do with that. I think, and again, now because, Jesus, what year was this? 2014?
2013, I think.
2013. So a long time ago. But my recollection was we were savvy enough to be able to say to ourselves, hey, what's the one thing that a movie couldn't give you? And that is, how's Deadpool going to bounce off some of the bigger names in the Marvel universe? Somewhere in there, I think by the time we were wrapping out, Ryan was leaking the test footage too.
That feels familiar. Around then, I don't know if it was during or the end, but
yes, somewhere in there, and you couldn't that was not a story that you could get in a video game or because of the Fox ownership of the media rights. And my other recollection about that was we definitely kind of snuck through. They were sunsetting Wolverine, right? So they were already knew that Death of Wolverine was on the horizon. He had lost his healing factor even, which we did play with a little bit in our book. But it wasn't a big thing. I just felt grateful before I got fired or quit, that I was going to be able to say that I wrote a story that tied back to Weapon X, that had Captain America and Wolverine and Deadpool. And the other thing that I was trying to do with you was, I think there was an attempt, and I don't even know if this is a smart notion to have done, but to have sort of made sense of why Deadpool's history was a total menagerie of pieces that didn't fit. And so making it that some of these things were simulations and some of these things he believed and some of these things he didn't, and some of these things happened to him, but he had no idea, all sort of felt like the Lebowski rug that would tie the room together in terms of what we were going to leave behind. It was a little bit of like custodial work before I thought I was bouncing out.
Well, so you came on with Brian for that like new series. And by the time it was like issue 15 when I came on, but like at that stage, I have no idea, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of felt like maybe Brian had stepped off because the scripts I was reading felt very, it didn't feel like two different people. It felt like it was like one person. Or was it a case where he'd talked it over and you scripted it out? Or
you know what? It's very funny. Brian, co-wrote those 45 issues with me, but at different times. He would be doing more and I would be doing less, or I would be doing more and he would be doing less. At that time, though, those particular issues I wrote really quickly. I think the bulk of the writing of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly probably happened in like 3 to 6 weeks. So I was just ahead of you. And you had to be. The way...
Also, it was double shipping at the time, wasn't it? Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say is... I know the deliverables. I know we wrote 1, 2, 3. I jumped ahead and did 6. Then we did 4, 5. Then I had to do 7. Then 8. We in order to feed the artists and keep the way the double shipping worked back then, you do 18 in a year. So some months you just published 1 issue of Deadpool. Some months you did 2, and I think he did more of the 2 Scott issues before, and I had leapt ahead and was writing this, pounded that out. And then I think I was getting ready to move too. So I had set this goal where I was like, okay, I want to get The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly done, be done with Deadpool, move my family and see, what else would be out there. Deck, honestly, I thought, the reason Doctor Strange is in issue 2 of Deadpool was because there is this expectation, you get fired or you quit or nothing lasts forever. And I just wanted to write a little Doctor Strange, and I figured you couldn't fire me before issue 2 would be drawn. You could fire me before issue 2 might come out, but it was around that time, that then The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly hit. And that there was, then an argument of like, well, why don't you stay on and you guys can figure out how to do this. And, there was a lot of stuff behind the scenes that don't matter, but, it's any artistic endeavor like this, especially in mainstream comics, is business and finance, and then I thought, oh, okay, well, it's funny. You were losing Venom. At that time, I had written about 1,000 hours of live TV at Attack of the Show. And that show was ending. We read the writing on the wall. And so I said, well, I'll try to write more. I'll try to make a living in comics. It would mean writing more comics. So that's how I ended up writing Nova and then Hulk and, getting into the room and, being there for Secret Wars and so on and so forth. And sort of really trying to find a place to hang my hat and tell stories in this universe that I loved. Until The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, though, I did feel like I was just transiting this thing that I loved on the way to the next writing opportunity.
So was it like, did you get a sense that storyline did well, and then that effect? Because I'm curious. There's not that many books that go long anymore. It's like 5 issues or 10 issues. But this is 13 years ago. So like staying on a book, do you become obsolete when you stay on a book, or do you need to be on like a fresh new book all the time? So at the time, was it like the book's doing well, why not stay on it? Or, there's more creative groundwork I can go through? Or
I think for me, it was this, well, a couple things. One, I think it did hit. Like we knew, we were like, oh, that's cool. That might be a forever. We behind the scenes, we called them immortal stories. Like when we were cooking Krakoa, we would talk about, well, what are the immortal X-Men comics? I think that's where that title of the Kieran book came from. It was just floating in the ether, but it felt nice to be able to go, because actually Brian and I pitched a document before we got the job that had a bunch of the stuff that we would later do. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly didn't exist yet, but the joke pitch that they were supposed to laugh at and then go, what else have you got, was the Dead Presidents, which actually really truly was perfect. That was one of those times that you point to your editors and you go, yeah, you got to trust your editors. You got to trust these guys. That's what they wanted. We're going to give it to them. But I also thought, well, that may not be a career, that may be like, you come on stage, you play your one-hit wonder and then you walk off. What was interesting was at that time, because Deadpool had, I think, earned his moment, right? Like Dan Way got to 50 before us. Like Dan and his collaborators and Ed, it's sort of funny because no knock on Rob Liefeld. I always think it's funny though that
he'll come back and knock you. No, I'm just kidding.
No, he won't. Like Rob, honestly, Rob. I know Rob has really been very sweet to me in person, but the like once you're debating like Rob and Fabian, you're not really then talking about Ed or Joe or even as much as it pains me to say Frank Thierry, the folks, Gail, Rick, Jerome, all these folks that came in and like kind of fucked Deadpool to life with all of these great stories. He really is this like Freddy Krueger monster. You're not, if you're debating the origin, you're not sort of telling the origin story. And I think staying on that book as long as I did, I prefer to think of it as I prevented a lot of interesting Deadpool stories from coming into the universe. I was like Hodor holding the door back from all these folks. But what I will say about all of this, though, just to put a point on it, we were privileged to have Deadpool primed at that moment. Like Dan wrote this great big long run. It was primed for another run. He had a video game. And then during our run, I was sitting in a chair that I didn't appreciate was also a rocket. Because once the test footage leaked, it was a trailer for a movie that would not exist. The only place that people could get all their Deadpool horniness out was in the comics. So I don't know what our sales number were, but we became like a little bit of a fire department too. Like when something wasn't working or something was late, it was throw the Deadpool guys at it. So like, the Hawkeye book was running late. That's how Hawkeye Deadpool existed. It was like, let's get, suit up. And, right. And that was a joy that brought Matteo Lolli in. There are a couple of folks that really provided like almost long-term service contracts to the Deadpool business. Like you were there, Hawthorne wrote, or, Hawthorne drew, I think, the most Deadpool issues. If not, it was Scott.
So I've often felt bad because I get so much like appreciation for Deadpool, but I'm like, I just did 5 issues. Hawthorne, he must have done 30. Like, yeah,
I mean, it's a lot, but that was the fun thing, is that in having that much rope, we were able to tell this big long epic. And I never got tired of signing it. I never flinch at a single issue. There's things I love about all of them, be it the collaboration or the end result. I think there's some really special comics in there. And then look, not for nothing, but Axel, commencing us, and then CB committing to us and letting us, put our foot down and finish that. It was rarefied air, as and especially in mainstream comics, getting to write the words "the end" or "the end for now" is very rare and lovely. And honestly, I don't know how that stuff would play out now. Like in the world that we inherited, where the Ryan's probably the most successful of all of the Deadpool writers, and we didn't have any eyes on us at that time. Marvel Studios was very much just looking at the Marvel pieces of the handbook, and we felt like we were sort of, like the parents were out of the house and we were just throwing a house party the whole time and driving it like a rental car that was like fully insured. So, we might get notes today about, we did a whole throwback to the 60s that took place in Los Angeles. That was like a kind of a Kirby tribute, and that Koblish did. And, a time traveler went to kill Hitler, and Hitler killed the time traveler. Then Hitler had a time machine. And when you explain it, you're like, oh, this is a comic that never got printed. And you're like, no, we printed it. It's in the omnibus. It's great. It's hilarious. We break hearts. Like, that was the super fun thing, is that, Deadpool provided us with this canvas that, whatever flavor we wanted to throw at him, be it comedy, be it tragedy, and I think it was evident, as evidenced, I think, in your work, right? We tonally whiplashed all that stuff. We did a heist into the Avengers
which
mansion.
you can do with that character. You can do a 100%. Genre. Actually, I do have some pages actually.
Oh yeah, look at that. Yeah, so that was you and Jordy. That's Wade being ejected from Weapon X back in the day, or or a simulation of it. But really, that is how we presented it as. And I love the three tap to the skull right there. Those are just little moments off.
That must have been in this. That must have been in the script. I don't think I.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Maybe I can't remember, man. I can't remember. It was. Well, we know 12 years ago.
We know that skull is not, didn't get the adamantium treatment yet, unless those were adamantium rounds that went in. But there was such your work has such a wonderful weight and drama to it, Deck, that like I don't know who else could have done that story for us,
I look, anybody bloody could have, like, but I mean, I don't know. I got the sense that, like, you wanted me on it. Like, I think.
Oh,
like,
we were
asked.
Pushing really hard, and pushing hard to the point where they said the math doesn't work. And I never know what else, you were at that time also, Deck, a rising star. Who knows what we kept you from, in all seriousness? Like, oftentimes.
I mean, no, this book made, I mean, Moon Knight's the thing that, like, launched me or whatever, did to another level. But like, but it's easy to forget, like, how big this book was for me. Like, Venom was being cancelled, whatever the sales were like on that. And it was tough to be on a book for a while because of double shipping, you'd end up being maybe 3 issues and then 1 and 3. So it was very hard to have a single storyline that you drew on your own. And this was maybe one of the first, probably, just because, again, maybe it was the timing. They managed to work it out.
Yeah. Well, also, look, we were very lucky in that most times when you're going to say, hey, I'll do another issue to accommodate an artist, you have to realistically expect that they'll go, I don't want another issue from you. I just want the 5 for the trade. But at that time, because Deadpool was selling, and also we were weirdly business-wise, I don't know if this is of interest to anyone. If people remember, if the rest of the line was $2.99, I want to say we were at $1.99. Like, we were a buck cheaper. We weren't just frequently publishing. We were frequently publishing at a rate that even if you weren't a Deadpool fan, but you liked us, you were going to stick with it because we could be on your pull at a buck cheaper. I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not, but we were just
also maybe because the next issue wasn't going to be a month. It's probably going to be 3 weeks or something. So you had something. If you're getting something regularly every few weeks, you were putting more material in front of people. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think you and I are interested in all this stuff, but it is so hard to know what the metrics are of success.
And the ground is shifting and has been shifting under our feet, for so long. But look, when these pages came in, this is sort of getting the band together. In this particular sequence, Wade is convinced that something untoward is happening to him, and Captain America and Logan are not unsympathetic, but they don't really have time for his nonsense. But this was, as much as you were saying that this was a big deal for you, I think this was also truly a big deal for Brian and I and the whole team, because up until that point, it was dead presidents and a demon that was making trades. And, we had done, we had slipped him into demon in the bottle. But this was finally like a fastball down the middle that was a Marvel story, right? Like it was a big time Marvel story.
Yeah, well, it would also, for me, it was a bit more grounded. I was getting to draw Captain America. I was getting to draw Wolverine.
Yeah.
And I liked the kind of more wet worky version of Deadpool,
Sure.
So it was, again, it's not like we had a conversation where it's like, what do you want to draw? It was just what you gave me was so up my street, like all the, the violence is really brutal, but it's very kind of, like remember, you wrote like it literally ripped his throat out. I'm like, I'm sorry, what now? But it was great. It was more, street level-y Deadpool, which is the type of stuff I was into anyway. So it was something I wasn't used to, but matched with something that really suited me. So I know that it's just, and like drawing a naked,
naked fight scene.
Yeah.
Eat your heart out. What was that? Eastern Promises, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I should use that for reference. There's one bit here I remember that it wasn't in the script. Like, we had it in the script that he had knuckle dusters.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
I can't believe. That's all you. The Deadpool knuckle dusters.
That was. I think that we were a couple of issues in at this stage, so I think we were playing around a bit. But I got to tell you,
if there's anybody out there that is cosplaying Deadpool, I don't see. I think I've only seen one Deadpool knuckle duster cosplayer. I would love to see more.
Well, you know what? I actually Googled it earlier, and I did see there's an artist who did draw Deadpool knuckle dusters, but I don't know when it was, because this is, like I said, this is 13 years ago. So God knows what's been done since,
Yeah.
But also, like, what I really liked about it was actually a really, like, it was really dark. Like by the end of the great action stuff that I got to do, and like took such a dark turn by the end of it. I remember reading the scripts going, oh my, like it was pretty brutal, but I loved it.
It was brutal. Good. Yeah.
I remember finding his, drawing a bit of dead people with Captain America and Wolverine looking over him, like that was hardcore, but I loved it. It was great.
Do you know what's funny now? This is so long ago that it predates the Sony hack by a country that shall not be named. That didn't.
Oh yeah.
Like, I don't know that that's definitely a thing that would get a S&P note now.
It was more innocent time, wasn't it? I don't want to drag on Deadpool too much longer, but I am curious. What was then the moment that made you kind of go, I'm done? Like, there was two things. It was, it must have been weird because, like you said, you ended up in a rocket. You were sitting in a chair, ended up being a rocket. Not everybody. That was like your first proper gig at Marvel, wasn't it? Like, if I recall.
Oh, that was Brian and I's first comic was Deadpool.
Yeah, and it just shut up. So, like, it must have been really strange to kind of like decide what you might do afterwards or around that book when it was such a hit.
There was a hot minute there too where, when I thought that TV show was ending, I was like, oh, okay, I did Deadpool. I'm like, what else is there to maybe do? What can I throw my hat in the ring? There was one Wednesday out there when I co-wrote an issue of Batman with Scott and for Matteo Scalera. I had a Deadpool issue out, I had a Nova issue out, and I had a Hulk issue all on one Wednesday. And I felt like, I was like, I did it. This is the nobody could ever get, like, have that kind of output. And I felt all over the place. It was 2014, I think, or somewhere in there. And I was like having so much more fun. The thing you have to understand when you write in Hollywood, you're often you can pour your heart into something, and it may never be shot. It may never be read. It may never be sold. It may never It may never. But in comic books, where we have the privilege of 100 days later, it's rolling off a printer, it exists. There is very little development hell. We have to iterate fast. We have to be good at what we do and continue to deliver at a high frequency. And it's different writing. A lot of the folks that are successful in Hollywood don't really want to clock in on comics because it requires more. It just more time, more everything. That said, we also say never give up comics, because this is the thing. It's the purest thing still, that to be able to bring something into the world, we did The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in less than a year, and it exists. It will exist when we're gone. It's in multiple printings and languages. And
no, it is worth being reminded that like the regardless of like the companies or whatever, like there's still the barrier between coming up with a story and getting it published so someone can read it. It's not that huge a barrier. Once you're kind of moving, it's pretty short, as opposed to say I mentioned screenwriting, which is like drafts and drafts and drafts and drafts if it even ever gets made.
Yeah. It's the comics only have to be a great comic, or hopefully they're a great comic. I don't feel the pressure that these things have to be anything other than that. Obviously, our world looked to comics. They were the visual language of storyboards. So that is a big part of the reason why they took over the way that they did. I get it. And there's, a vindication of Stan, who retired probably at my age now from comics, only to go to Hollywood to start pushing that boulder up the hill. He doesn't get enough credit really for being out here and trying to explain to people why Spider-Man or Hulk or any of these things that he had a hand in creating with the artists could be anything more than what they are. And, I'm a fan too. Like, it feels good to be able to, like I do, I'm writing like fan fiction, right? But in this particular fan fiction gets to live alongside everything that I ended up loving.
So yeah, I have other questions. Sorry, I've got a few questions, but weirdly, a lot of the ones I got from Instagram kind of matched them, so I'm trying to massage them in. I'll end the Deadpool with this though. So when did you kind of feel that, okay, I've done X amount of issues, now's the time to step off, as opposed to all, was it a career thing? Was it a creative thing? Because I do think sometimes the career stuff isn't really talked about as much.
Yeah,
it's
when's
a good time to step off?
I think, honestly, there was this impulse that I loved The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I loved the way it was coming together. I was signaling that I thought that might be a time that I might step off. I wasn't trying to make a decision for Brian either. There's probably another version where, I had stepped off and Brian takes it for a bit. It's very funny though, speaking of career stuff, to go back in time, Brian and I were recommended by Rick to Marvel 5 years earlier to write for Marvel. And they said, well, we want to try you out on Deadpool, but Deadpool's not selling. We can't support it as a mini or something. So it's funny just in a couple of short years how that pendulum would swing. When Secret Wars happened, we knew about a year out that Secret Wars was going to pause the line. We didn't exactly know what would happen at that point, but we were told, be prepared for an end of some kind, whether it's the end in bold or the end and you pick up on the other side. I think we were one of the only books that continued beyond Secret Wars. There were some exceptions. I know Miss Marvel did too, and some other things. That could have been the end. We gave Wade a moment of happiness in issue 45, and he felt joy, and then the world ended. We had gotten clearance from Jonathan and Tom and Marvel to do an incursion. that was going to end the world. So it was a great Deadpool story, but it also dovetailed nicely with the publishing plan. Coming back, it was, I honestly, and I'm a bit foggy, I think they just assessed that it would be one less thing that they would have to worry about. Deadpool was chugging along at a certain number. Could it chug along at a certain number and you don't have to retool it quite yet? We were still just business wise. Also, my recollection was when Rogue One moved for Disney, it moved a year, but Marvel had already been cooking a book that all of a sudden left the financial year. And so that's where we jumped in with I think that's where we sent Mike Hawthorne to space. He did an entire 80-page $10 issue, and it's brilliant. It's a book in and of itself. We played with a chest burster that ended up having Deadpool abilities because it grew and weighed, and he kind of treated it like a dog. But it's, Mike is such a serious draftsman, and it didn't matter what we were calling for, it was going to be the best version of what we were calling for to be drawn, and so, would less Deadpool have been better for me? Maybe. I feel, though, in all sincerity, especially after the movies, it's been a privilege for me to be associated with him in that way. It's been a skeleton key here in town. When I started knocking on doors in the early 2000s, agents were telling me they didn't know how to market me. I had a horror thing, I had a comedy thing, I had a coming of age thing that was based on a real kid that I went to high school with who made a submarine in his backyard. And people thought that based on a true story on the front page was fake. So it was all a disaster. And then it became very simple. One of the Deadpool guys is here. You want to meet him? He's got bring him in. Again, I hope that I was as good to him as he has been to me.
Oh, fair enough. Somebody was asking, how does Gerry pivot between genres and stories when writing? How does he approach compartmentalization of stories? Which I think it ties into a bit with the new book. This ends tonight. This ends.
Yeah.
This ends tonight.
This ends tonight.
Because it felt very different to. Well, you kind of do hop around, like you said, like you're the Deadpool guy, and maybe that was the problem you had before with the horror and whatnot, because this isn't like, falling in love with the Path to Hell, or it's not like Analog. It's, does hopping around genres keep you interested? Is it
yes?
Is it a smart thing to do?
I honestly, I don't. If you had to guess whether it's additive or reductive, it might be reductive. Like if I was just like the horror guy or the comedy guy, I might have increased traction. But I think it just creatively keeps me fresh. I punch myself out on one thing, but it's a different muscle group to make. Honestly, making someone laugh is actually harder than almost anything else, and so when I'm not writing jokes, I'm a little bit more relaxed. But I think for me, a good idea is a good idea, and my interests are varied. Like I loved film. I was so inspired by film. I loved watching Godzilla movies on TV with my old man. I loved comic books, and not everything has to be a comic, right? Like I'm writing a feature spec right now, which just means a speculative script. I'm not being paid to write it. No one may ever make it. I didn't assess that it would be a good comic book. Now that didn't stop a lot of kind of boiler rooms from taking film ideas and making them comics in order to be a shortcut to making it a feature. Those days are done anyway. Like that business model doesn't exist.
Sorry, I don't mean to derail you, but I mean, it does kind of feel like it was definitely a thing for a while, but I mean, the way that like film has been, and I don't really think it's hard to get anything made now, so I don't think anyone's just like throwing something in the pot now to see if it, on the off chance it works, because there's so many, strikes against you. Or am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. And if you want, Old Man Duggan can drop a tiny little history lesson. I think the first time that really happened and worked was a movie called Cowboys and Aliens. Do you remember that? I think it started.
Oh, it did come out, didn't it?
Oh yeah, it came out. I think it's Harrison Ford and James Bond. Yeah. Who?
No, sorry, that rings a bell. I remember hearing about it. I never saw it.
So, and Daniel Craig. But it was, I think so go back that far, and no knock on anybody, but this was the history of this project. Cowboys versus Aliens existed as a speculative film script, and it had been around all over town. It was in the back. If I'm a development executive, it was on my shelf of all these other scripts, had not been picked up. They did something that nobody had really done before, which was they paid to produce it as a comic book. And then what they did was actually kind of the smartest part of the equation. They gave away the issue, or they sold it for 25 cents. So stores were like, I'll order 50 copies. It allowed them then to say, we outsold X-Men this month. Right. So now there's a big Hollywood Reporter article. There's a Variety thing, Cowboys versus Aliens, hot new comic book property. The rights were snatched up and the film was made, but nobody ever turned around to look and see that they had the film script there the whole time. And that was my recollection from being a back issue clerk at Golden Apple Comics back in the day. I was
that was like early 2000s?
Yes.
Like
so I got a job there in 99. So before Sauron's eye fell over comic book, pre Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, which, by the way, I consider as important as almost anything anyone's ever done in comics. The lightning in a bottle performance. It was a big bang. Credit to everyone that cast him, that took a shot on him. Also Shane Black for Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, that showed them that he could be on time, be at the top of the call sheet, make the movie, be charming in the movie. What a world we all live in now because of all that.
I think the only pop culture reference for Robert Downey Jr. before Kiss Kiss Bang Bang for me was the Simpsons episode where it's
he was a punchline, right?
Yeah, he's going to the rehab. What was it? I can't remember the song. But that was it. That was the most. He was a punchline for being an addict or whatever.
He was
what a world we've been in.
Yeah, and look, a lot of things conspired against him, not just the addiction issue. I think he was like over sentenced, we'd call it, like he was sentenced to prison when that should not have happened. But anyway, the long and the short of it is,
I'm checking in. Sorry, that was the song. I'm checking in. Sorry, it was going to drive me crazy. And it's like, I remember that.
Is that still on Disney Plus, or is that one of the deleted scenes?
Don't know. I have to look it up. But so I totally derailed you there from.
No, that's fine. I was just saying everything that gets made in Hollywood is a miracle. Comic books became a short circuit for that, and it worked for a long time. I remember at the time, or not at the time, but maybe before Deadpool ish, you would get the odd writer kind of reaching out, going, "Hey, would you prefer like drawing like these pitch pages and send them to Hollywood?" And I never did any of them, but like it was definitely going around at the time. But yeah.
But I mean, how many times did it actually work? I'd say 2%?
Well, here's the thing. It was Hollywood wants to not be the first person to say yes to someone. And so when it exists as a comic, it's like, fuck you, we already got our yeses. This exists. Do you want in or out? It was us. It was creative folks or wily producers trying to take that power back and going, get your offer. Here's what you're getting. You don't have to guess. Now you can note it and massage it, but all of this, and for directors, like Ridley Scott still communicates in what they call Ridleygrams. They're storyboards. He's been doing that, since his commercial days before Blade Runner. So the comic book just became this template. And it to the point, Declan, where I sat down with a producer who had the #1 movie out in theaters, and he slid this pile of film scripts across because he'd read The Last Christmas and really liked it. It was our first comic, that the last thing that Rick drew before he went writing full time. And
what a loser.
Yeah, he got off on the wrong floor, but he slid these things across, and he was like, I need all of these film scripts to be comic books. And I was like, oh, I get it. This is like still early 2000s. And I was like, just so you know, some of these are comic books. One of them was Hard Boiled. And
oh, wow.
But it got to the point at Golden Apple in my last days there, because I did transition out to Brian and Patton came and took me away, and I was working for them a little bit on this Comedy Central thing. But it got to the point where people, this is true, they would walk into Golden Apple, development executives, and they'd be like, what's not optioned yet? And I was like, that's not a section in the bookstore. And you're describing actually a job title called development executive, which if you want my resume, I'll be happy to provide it. But like, I'm not in that business, you know?
Were you never, I mean, because you've done a lot of creator-owned stuff, and, you know, you straddle that world with like Hollywood stuff and comics and creator-owned comics. You know, was there ever the temptation to be like, I could just get something out the door and, you know, I mean, a cynical person would be like, why haven't you done that already, you know?
Yeah, you know, the creator-owned things that I'm privileged to collaborate on, you introduced me to David O'Sullivan, and I couldn't be more grateful. Like, I love that collaboration. I think Analog is still, unfortunately, has aged like a fine wine. You know, there's a strong argument that we're closer to the world of that comic book. And just to give everyone the quick snippet, it's after the internet becomes so insecure that the only way to maintain secrets is to put them back on paper. How do you move them with men and women called ledgermen that move secrets in briefcases with guns? So it's a way of just making a neo-noir and bringing all of my favorite things from noir film noir forward into a comic book pulp. And David killed it. And, you know, that was something that, you know, it's been in development since we hit print on it. It was optioned before the book was out. And
you say David killed it, do you mean he did a good job, or he ruined it? Because could be either.
No, he did a wonderful job. I do try, as you know, to give authorship, because I tell a story to my collaborators, and then those collaborators really tell the story to everyone else. And I come back around and I try not to trip on my dick in the end. You know, I do more with less. I get rid of cap boxes. I try and punch up and clarify and just let the art do the talking. And, you know, it's been really successful. And that is still, Chad Stahelski has that, and it's closer than ever to Knockwood, you know, getting some serious traction. So, you know, but it's two different ecosystems, and the Hollywood thing still remains this lottery ticket. You can't ever take any of it, you know, as anything other than forward progress or hopes and dreams and thoughts and prayers until someone hands you a check. But we've been handed some nice checks, you know, and I actually am working on a new Analog story for David that, like, it's taken it's as many things in my personal life. It's been short circuited by life.
Well, I had a conversation with a producer type person recently, and they were kind of saying, oh, you could pitch this and you could pitch that. And I mean, I assume you feel the same. It's like, I could just make a comic. And it's mine, and I can do whatever I want with it, and it gets made, and it like 80% is likely to actually be made and someone can read it. Whereas I could see how very tempting it would be to go down this other road and spend years trying to develop stuff that never gets made. And I just don't think I could handle that. It's
really hard emotionally to sort of, when you've had this output that we've been we've worked for it. Like, we work really hard. Comics is hard work. But to go from being able to almost at will create something with a group of collaborators, to walk back into basically playing a saxophone into a void, and maybe somebody hears it and comes dancing up to you with a basket of money to go, I know several hundred people that we can fill this and put a green screen and get actors. And it's just, I don't have the emotional bandwidth to just initiate that stuff until recently, when I said, I just have an idea in my head that there's no reason for this particular action movie to be a comic book. It wouldn't visually sing. It doesn't need to exist there. It's just I couldn't talk myself out of writing.
Yeah, but plus you've also made lots of comics, so it's not like you have this desperation. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, I've scratched this itch, so I'm content with that. So this doesn't need to be that thing. I have to return, because I knew this would happen. We just get chatting. The original question was, how does Gerry between genres and stories when writing? So sorry, I
the answer is ADHD.
Okay.
There is a real answer of, some sentences are just one sentence in a story. Some are the basis for a whole book or a series of books, and I do try, and for anyone out there that wants to follow into comic books, please capture these fireflies as they flutter around you, because it's not every day that they come and visit. So capture them, because you've got them, they're yours, you'll work together, you grow them, you nurture them, and it's amazing what they can grow into. And that's really the thing there. I think my most successful Marvel stories are horror stories. I think The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly and Deadpool is what you would quote, our Deadpool run was kind of a horror story. I think Savage Avengers was a horror story. I would love to delve more into pure horror, but that like razor line between, horror and comedy, where they both kind of exist, that's where I vibrate the most. And so, I'm also, I'll be honest with you, I find sometimes the things that I don't pick to be as seductive as the things I do. Like, for instance, when Hulk came available, I knew I had 12 issues to write Hulk. And I didn't want to write Smart Hulk. So I was like, I don't want to do this. And then I thought, oh, wait, he doesn't want to be dumb, but he's going to get dumb. All right, I got a tragedy. I got a Hulk tragedy that I'm going to, you're going to do Flowers for Algernon. You're going to have an Alzheimer's type analog for 12 issues of Hulk that is this great fear in his closet. You just chase those things. If you're feeling funny, be funny. If you're feeling down and life shit on you, well, shit is fertilizer. Grow something out of that horror. And I truly, like, I don't mean it to, like, I think that is funny, but it's like, that's also, I think, good advice. You go with what you're feeling, because you will sort of end up in a place where you're like, oh, I didn't know I'd end up on a mountain in space here, but here I am.
Again, I was just thought of a question just from all that. It was it's because it's something that applies for me. Is that does format affect what you're going to do? So, like, say, Infinite Horizon was a graphic novel. What was the one you did was a graphic novel recently?
Dark Room too.
Dark Room, yeah, Dark Room. Yeah. That was a graphic novel. Yeah. I don't know what the plan for This Ends Tonight is. That a mini or is it ongoing?
So that's going to be a mini,
or ongoing as much as you can.
No, that one is planned as a finite. Because we really wanted Jay Lee and June Chung to be able to have total authorship over that. But there's over 100 pages of of Jay and June art that's just incredible. So
he hasn't drawn a book in a while, has he? I can't remember the last book he's drawn.
Yeah, the last thing he did was also for my collaborators on that book, Robert Wyndham and Kelvin Mao. They all worked on a book called Seven Sons. That was at Image, but before that, it had really been a long time. So, yeah, I think, Jay is one of those just indelible talents who, there's not enough of the pages, and I hope people cherish this stuff. It's so much fun. It's really, I'm outside of my comfort zone a little bit. I don't think this is a paint by numbers story by any stretch of the imagination. It'd be hard to say that this is a template for anything other than I think a great comic, but it's
told in a very
revenge tales.
Yeah, it's told in a very, like, his visual approach to this, to the panels are very distinct, shape based, and I haven't seen anything. I mean, it's not the newest thing in the world, but I haven't seen anything like that in a while. And it's curious because I haven't read his story, anything he's drawn in a while, and to see him tell it like this was.
The beagle says hi. She's letting me know the mail is here.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
But again, I trailed off. Yeah, does the format affect what the story is going to be? Like, is it, like you said, with the Hulk story was going to be 10 issues, so you had a finite story to tell. Whereas if someone said, "Do you want to do Hulk indefinitely?" would that have changed everything?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think you have to, and by the way, the Darkroom was an experiment in that. We were in COVID, and Scott was an experiment. That particular artist had not done sequentials yet. So I gave him the prologue as a straight horror. And then as life got more horrifying, I was like, oh, you know what? I better bring in some relief comedy. And that actually really did help that book, that the tone of that book, became exploring dark rooms. We had a literal dark room that is like a basin where all the items that are thrown in rivers and oceans collect. And so it's this like magical sort of endless magical antiquity shop. But the second issue of a second volume of Darkroom that we're putting the finishing touches on is sort of the darkroom that lives inside of each of us. It's not really the darkroom that is in the prologue, which is a literal darkroom. The MacGuffin in that was a camera. So I was just trying to combine things that I love, which is always really good, I think, advice for anyone doing anything. Like, drive towards what you love and put that out into the world. But format definitely plays a part. With David, I also did kind of a one-off Twilight Zone thing called Paladin of Axes that was about someone who was like collecting. It's so cool. Another COVID era project that I was thrilled to be able to work with David again on. And again, David, not just drew that, but also lovingly colored it.
It's beautiful.
So beautiful. But that
he showed me a page of that in the pub, and I died laughing when certain characters that I was not expecting came into it. I started laughing in the pub. But sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, it's like that. That was the freedom of that format to say, it's almost like I think it was 60 some odd pages, but it was, again, what's a novella in a comic book world look like? Well, it looks like that.
But that's a great format. Like, it's not used that much. But
yep. No, I got a taste for it. Like, that was a great experiment. I love it and would love to do more of it.
Yeah, you do experiment with creator-owned stuff. Like, I've noticed, it's not like safe 12 issues, miniseries, 2 collections, hardcover. It's not like a set. Everything you do seems to be a little bit different.
I'm trying to see, what the format would be, tailor a format for the story. And with Falling in Love, that is more or less structured, the way that a lot of the Image ongoings were, and including the $9.99 cheap trade, which the jury is still out on whether or not that will have worked for us. So the second trade is 2 more issues, so it's going to be more dollars anyway. Gary's just wrapping up the issue 10, and we're going, I hope, to at least 20. if not beyond, and we'll see what that brings. But the dark room, we're even talking about a way possibly of we're going to match the first book so that the folks that were enjoying that have volume 2, and then potentially if we do soft covers of both later, maybe even bringing out a digest or waiting for the third book, which is sort of the end of that volume, and then trying that, because I think those are great. And just from a business perspective, my assessment is that's actually how the next generation likes their comics to feel, and how they're actually collecting them, and how they're sitting on shelves. I know you can't see, but the second row of books on that shelf are all Lone Wolf and Cub. They're the Dark Horse reprints, and they're at a smaller size. And I pay attention to what my Declan, my son, is 16, and so his friends are really getting into comic books now. One of them dipped into a Marvel Rivals lobby to hear me being roasted that they didn't like my X-Men run, as they're waiting to get into the game where they were going to play the Hellfire Gala season. And I said, "Wow, you kids,
But I have to say that always obsessed me when you call your son my Declan, because I thought I was your Declan. But
I can have two Declans.
You can have two. But I know what you mean, because I especially with creator-owned stuff, the economics matter. How are you going to build a book that will be self-sustainable? Can it pay for itself? Yada yada yada. I'm curious. I don't know. I have no idea if Dynamite would do it, but I think doing Thundercats and Digest after a while would make sense, because it could hit the right age. But who knows? But yeah, I have to get another question because I keep derailing everything. Colm Griffin, mate of mine, asked, "I've always liked Gerry's work. Colm, you're a lick. My question, how hands-on is he when it comes to the process of working with the artist on his books? Does he select the artist? Does he give notes, suggestions on artwork? Does he leave the artist to it and takes care of his side and leaves the artist to take care of theirs?" But I mean, I could answer that because I've worked with you, but as it changed depending on who you worked with.
I don't really think it does. I first of all, thank you for the kind words, but my process is, on a creator owned, I always want to, find someone that I want to work with, that wants to work with me, that we then would go out and cook something together that we want to bring into the world that doesn't exist. That's just the honest square one starting point. On the Marvel or DC or any work for hire stuff, you don't always have the luxury necessarily of picking the team, although after 20 years at it, you usually do get some input. And then I consider the comic book as this living document that a lot of people have some sway over. I consider, unless you're frankly, Deck, writer artist, or Frank Miller writer artist, what we do.
We're the same, correct? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, no, but more of a craft, right? We are working together to build something. We're hopefully all moving in the same direction. But I feel like I owe it in almost every case to provide a full script. The artist has reign to deviate from it and make it better. And then when the art comes back, I basically start over. I take that draft. If all of a sudden the page has 4 panels instead of 3, great. I'm rewriting it. I'm polishing it. I'm trying to shrink the amount of words that you're reading. That's the one thing when I go back and look at what the output years ago, I just see someone who was a little more insecure, going, overwriting some things maybe back in the day that now doesn't really exist. There is less and more. And so more and less, anything that we can do along the way to let the visuals tell the story, and to, I also do what's called punch up, right? So, especially on a Deadpool script, sometimes the joke that I've seen tattooed on people isn't there until the last day, right? Like, and sometimes that's a rude surprise for artists. Oh, I didn't know you were gonna, but I try to be upfront about it, and I'm really not trying to hit print on anything until everyone sort of had their say. Usually it's a welcome thing. Oh, that's great. There's two balloons or there's one balloon instead of two, or whatnot. So it is a process, and that's what I like. I like that collaboration. In fact, I owe a West Coast Avengers 9 polish for Danny Kim right now, where we're getting to the climax of that, and like I can't wait to go do it. It's also a separate muscle group. The story is there now. It's just, how can I make it even better? How can I make it sing? And I know a lot of folks are not like that. I know some writers are like, I wrote a script, then they drew it. Now it's off to the letterer, and I'll look at it and give some notes. But like I do that what I call the polish pass, or the letter's polish pass, because I think it's unfair to the letterer to let them take a first whack at it and try and make sense of some things that maybe don't make sense anymore, or that have moved, and then make their life easier, where I'll do my work, make their life easier. It's
so you look at the artwork and redo a script before sending to the letterer.
Yeah, and I have
that's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. It's a lot of work. I make a lot of work for myself, but I also have I'll continue. This is one monitor here. This is the home office. And then there is another monitor here that is a vert monitor where I put the pages.
Oh,
so
cool.
I can have the page large, and then I block out everything on that second monitor is just script. And that's the only thing that exists while I'm doing that polish. The 20 pages of comic and the 20 pages of script.
That's cool. And what is it that grabs your eye when it's like you said, when you're doing creator owned, it's like it's like you're marrying somebody, so you're going to be pretty careful about it. And when you're doing work for hire, you may not get the person you want, and sometimes you get someone probably who you're like, I wasn't who I was thinking of, but is brilliant. But if you're picking somebody, or is there a quality of someone's work? It's not like you're going to pick the same style or anything, but does something different grab you, or is it just something like that you find as a common element that grabs you?
It's funny. It's like the thing that I most look for. They have a saying that Seinfeld doesn't do well in Spain. Humor doesn't always translate, right. And even if it's not humor comic, I'm always looking for, or would we be able to like sit down and have a coffee or a bite or a drink and hang out, and could we make each other laugh? Is something I always look for. I think all of our Deadpool artists had that. There were so many gears that were like so necessary. You had to be able to break hearts, but on the page turn, you have to also make everyone laugh. And as you know, not everyone has that ability, so that I'm always trying to look for that. Also there's a lot of other ways to make a living and get richer doing other things. Like if you're not enjoying yourself, it's a problem. So that's a big thing. We talk about that too, just for writers, that like art. One of the questions is, hey, I know this person is good, but am I going to be able to be in a room with them for 8 hours? And if someone texts back, oh yeah, great. If someone's like, can we get on the phone? And, there's always like, oh, that's someone's spider sense firing off.
Right.
So
yeah.
I try to be boring in real life and exciting on the page, because, when we're running late, an artist isn't getting paid, right? A day you're not working is so. Again, life has caught up with me where I have been late over the last year. I've been a little, the dark room is late, the volume 2, not because of anything Scott did, but because my life was on fire. So you just try to be very transparent about that sort of thing. And, hopefully you've made friends with these collaborators and they're like, oh yeah, everyone understands. I feel for people. I hear sometimes someone was just telling me, oh, it's got to be so nice. You guys all like each other. Everyone on my book hates each other. And we all got a laugh. And I was like, man, that's a hard way to live your life, I'm sorry, but not all. I've never been in a band. I don't have a musical bone in my body, but most of I think my teams, everyone could be in a van and ride around together and not be at each other's throats.
Hey, there's an idea, signing tour.
We do talk about that. Yeah. We hop in.
I do have a couple of writing questions people are asking. As somebody's asking is, when it comes to writing comics, are they something you need to build up or pare down? Are they skeletal journeys from point A to B that need more meat? Or are these unwieldy epics that need to fit into 20 or so pages?
Honestly, not overstuffing a comic is a real art. I think it depends where the idea comes from. Sometimes you have a germ of an idea that you're then growing into a beast. Other times, you might have something that you've written a bunch of into a book. Keep a notebook, write down all of the ideas, take voice memos, capture everything, because you don't know, some of these sentences you may not be able to make sense of a thought right away after writing it down, or it may grow or change. I've had that a million times. Something that I thought was going to be something ended up living in the Marvel universe. Very rarely does an idea start for me that is a Marvel thing. I don't think I've ever taken like a Doctor Strange idea and made it like a creator-owned thing. But a bunch of times I've written things like for instance, one thing I know that went from just being a good idea to a really good Marvel idea was making Kulan Goth a cannibal. That was, he was eating, he couldn't learn spells traditionally. He wasn't like Harry Potter enabled, but if he ate a wizard, he could gain his magic. And that was just a great like Conan idea, but it was a free floating idea that was untethered to all of that just got captured and then sort of deployed. So, when you're lucky to write as many different cool things, I guess I would have been challenged to make that idea a comedy, but I might have been up to it. Maybe there's a cannibal comedy that I could do. It found its home. Yeah. Ideas don't you think that's true when you write? Like ideas will find a home, or no?
I mean, I don't think I'm a big idea guy. Like I don't have loads and loads of ideas. If I'm that might be another question kind of touches on that, but it's actually maybe I'll answer that. I think yeah, okay, I'll ask this question because it ties in. But I would say generally when I'm working on a script, after all the stories I've drawn or written or whatnot, I have a fairly good idea of like what's gonna, you'll outline it roughly, and like 17 things, big events aren't going to happen in one comic. You'll have a good sense of like, this will fit in 20 pages. You might need to condense stuff or you might need to kind of like broaden it out, but I have a fairly good instinct for what'll fit. Now, sometimes you can be wrong, you got to change things, but I feel like I've gotten a good sense of a flow of what'll fit as regards a 20-page comic, but I think this ties in better. Someone's asking, how do you guys find inspiration for writing stories for already existing characters like Iron Man and Mystique? Does the already existing lore and characterizations of those characters help or hinder writing? I think that ties in a bit.
Yeah. Well, for me, my thinking about the big two work is that I can never make someone not a fan of Iron Man or Hulk or Deadpool. I can just make them not my fan. And with all of this stuff, I think you still have to A, please yourself, and B, provide something that will please the artist. Like I can write a script in a week, hopefully a great script. if I was lucky enough to work with Declan again, Declan, what are you? Are you about 7 weeks for the 20-page to do a good job?
Probably 8 at this stage. Okay. But then if I'm coloring, you're talking about another 2 weeks.
Sure. So it needs to be something that like is something that propels Declan to his desk to work, right? That you want to draw. So, I think it was Tom Brevoort that said, continuity is just a guardrail that we use, that like you can always break stuff. For instance, like writing Iron Man, I loved Iron Man. Like I read the Armor Wars, I read Armor Wars 2 when John Romita Jr. was on the book, my spiritual addition to that universe was I always thought there's an Armor Wars 3 where it gets baked into the Sentinels. So that was like a germ of an idea that I thought that's the only way that I could try and jump over that. We like to try and always be bigger and better and do a love letter to something that you loved. And that was my attempt at that, to do what's the biggest Iron Man story I could tell, where he seemingly very limited resources and then overcomes a Sentinel program with Stark Tech. And we had built what were ships that became this big giant Iron Man Voltron robot that I was like, I don't think I can top that. So maybe that's a time to leave the book. And that felt like the right creative decision. So, you just try to have the most fun possible. I know that's it sounds a little crazy, but that is honestly, I think our true North Star. If do you agree with that?
Like to tie slightly to what you asked me earlier was that I just don't have ideas in the drawer. I kind of come up with stuff as it's needed. I might have like 2 or 3 or something, but if it's creator owned, it's like, I love this guy's art. I want to write something for him. What will it be? It's not really, I've got this brilliant idea. It's more like something I've made for the person. Generally, that's the case. My experience doing like the work for hire stuff is, what is it? What's the story that matters to me? That I'd like to tell. And like, what can I do with this character? So Mystique, I liked Mystique a lot from X-Men, but I was not an expert on the character. There was some storyline from before that a lot of people were angry about and were telling me like, you better undo this. But like, I'm not going to undo another person's story. No. It's not my job to undo another person's work. But I can write around it. I can tell a story that I want to do and it not necessarily clash. But I think that I remember when I was working with Warren on Moon Knight, he had said he read the first 5 issues of Moon Knight and that was it, and just went from there. And that's been my strategy with everything since with Thundercats. I watched the first few episodes of the cartoon. I'm like, okay, I've got the core and I'm going to work from there. So I think with Mystique, I just needed to know what story did I personally want to tell? Where did I want that character? And I wanted her to be a villain again.
Yeah.
I was, after she'd been an anti-hero so long, I'm like, we need more villains. I want to make her a bad, evil character by the end.
It's exactly what it needed at that moment. And Deck, what you said is so important. You can't be too precious about this stuff. Like, for instance, Brian and I had read a lot of Deadpool, but we made a conscious decision not to go back and reread a lot of Deadpool to prep for it. We had what we needed to know, and we wanted to create a jump on point, that was an on-ramp, right? We want to be as welcoming as possible. And the danger in being so beholden, especially now that these universes are approaching a century, is that you end up making comic books about comic books rather than making new comic books.
Well, actually, I remember one thing with Mystique was, it reminded me, you said it earlier on with Deadpool, the background was so murky and contradicted each other. Like Mystique had the very same problem. So for me, it's like, well, what's the problem with the character?
Right.
And can I work with that as opposed to trying to, I find limitations that's what I have a hard time, because I want to do more creator owned stuff next year. But it's way easier to like come up with a Terminator story because I know what Terminator is, and how am I going to do something different or do a new take with it? But you know what it is. Yeah. Creator owned, as you know, there's nothing. It's a completely open playpen, and I have no idea, will I step over here, a step over there. That's why it takes so long to come up with stuff, because I have to create fake guardrails. Whereas the work for hire stuff, it's not that it's easy. I just find that like I can work with the restrictions fine. So, you know, if I was asked, to do an Iron Man story, I'd have to sit down and go, okay, well, what can I not do? And then come up with something else. So in some ways, it's kind of more helpful to work on established characters.
Right. Yeah, I mean, look, it also, when you exercise your imagination for a living, there may be the other thing that I do, and it doesn't sound like this is necessarily something that you would do or would want to do, but I just will take notes. Like, I'm not writing Batman right now, but I have a folder marked Batman that I just continually am peppering in ideas that are pretty sweet Batman ideas. Once or twice in my past that's panned out. That's become very useful. In fact, the Iron Man idea, the Armor Wars 3, sort of also existed in that universe. It's very strange. I've written dozens of issues of X-Men, but I never really mind my X-Men folder, because I ended up writing in the Krakoan era that didn't exist in my imagination. So all of these things that were X-Men ideas are just sort of like they're still out in its green fields for them. Whereas there's nothing left in my Deadpool folder, and really there wasn't a hell of a lot to begin with, because really when he debuted, I was off to college. I couldn't afford comics anyway. I certainly knew who he was, but that may have been maybe my secret ingredient, right? It was to not have been. I knew the Joe stuff. I read a bunch of the stuff over the years. I loved what Rick and Jerome were doing, but I obviously was current on the Dan stuff, but there is freedom in sort of going, hey, I'm going off the road here. I'm going to grab the wheel and do something.
I find what helps me is because I draw stuff that I can have an idea for something, and then I can go and draw stuff for a while, and I can kind of let that thing percolate for a while. Whereas like I'm writing more now than I ever have, and I'm finding it very hard to keep, deadline on this script, but like brain time on this, and and I don't have. I think the only thing I have is I have a Deadpool. Sorry, not Deadpool. Daredevil. I have a Daredevil. It's the only thing I have in my back pocket. I don't have an Iron Man idea or all these other ideas, because I just haven't had the time. And I was asked to pitch something recently, which would be great, but I'm like, I got nothing.
Yeah.
I have because my brain's too pulled on the other stuff right now. I need to kind of like get rid of it. I mean, you must have.
But it's also good on you for sort of saying, hey, I'm not going to pitch on that because I don't have, the creative impulse to pursue it. It's how I think some folks lead themselves astray to sort of, all of that stuff will still be there. You really have to bring like a tremendous A game to it. And I know you have a Daredevil in you that is just going to blow the doors off everyone someday. You'll get to do it
someday.
I'm sure you will. Write and draw for yourself. By the way, that's the first thing that we all say. If you don't need us, don't have us aboard. If you want to write and draw, like we and the offer always is, we always read stuff and poke holes and stuff, or say good job, take a lap when things are great. We're always there to try and support each other. So.
Not me. I'm there to sabotage.
No, that's what you say. Yeah, you're a very toxic person.
So somebody was
asking, so you won't say mean things about me online.
That's the only reason. Yeah. Once I have the room, I'll just come up with more insults. Somebody was asking about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and they said which is their favorite Deadpool story. Thank you very much. How does the process? The two of you and Brian Posehn are credited on the 5-parter, Good, Bad, and the Ugly. How does the process break down between two writers and the artist in a very visual and emotionally written arc? Which is interesting because I have co-written as well. And like it was definitely a process of trying to figure out how that worked. I will say by the time I got the script, I mean, I was mainly talking to you, but like you had the script written. Like it wasn't like a case where I was like, hey, I got an idea. Like I'm not even that artist. I don't really want.
No, but it's funny.
I'm not, like I have ideas at all. I'm like, what's the script? I will draw the script.
No, but if you may not recall this, but my understanding, I can't quite remember exactly how the final page of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly played out. But what I wanted Wade to see was that he sort of felt us watching for a moment. But that was as much as I wanted a fourth wall break in that story. And I believe I may have said, or you could do this and make it a laugh. And I want to say that you and Jordy came back and you're like, no, it's got to just be played straight. And he sort of disappears into the crowd. And I was like, okay, great. That's how that'll sort. I remember
the page. I don't remember having any input. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not like, Gerry never let me have ideas. I just, I tend to just kind of run with what's in the script, and maybe there's a tiny little tweak, but I do remember you being very, supportive or back and forth about things.
Yeah, and look, when part of it too is a frequency issue, right? Like if someone is solving your problem on issue 15, that's awesome because you have a problem with issue 16. Like, and that was the best. That's the truly the best rooms are the best idea wins. When you talk to people, whether it's in Hollywood or comic books, and we really ran Krakoa like a TV writer's room, anybody could have had the best idea, and that best idea was going to get elevated, whether it was going to be in your book or whether you were going to get credit for it or not. Didn't matter. That's the fun thing. So honestly, Brian and I hope Brian's not here, to sort of speak for himself. I can be a difficult co-writer because there's this part of me that I've loosened up a lot over the years, but I was more of a control freak. However, a co-writing in a perfect world, it's great because if he gets up and hits a home run, guess what? That makes my life easier. We're all playing for that same team. Great. Now I don't have to hit a home run. All I have in me right now is a single. But then there are other days, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly just happened to be one of those things I think that schedule-wise skewed more towards me. So you and I got simpatico on a lot of stuff, but I can promise you, Brian read all of this stuff and was pitching jokes and having input on those PDFs the same way that, when he was writing for Scott, that I would show up at the end. And I was always grateful for the input because it was like, oh man, here's another joke I didn't think of, or here's an idea I didn't think of that made it better. Writing partnerships that are reductive don't last long. We did over 50 issues of Deadpool together. So it's just, and Brian and I still, would cook together today. So you haven't worked with anybody else in a while until this ends tonight, right? I can't remember you co-writing with anybody else in a while. Yeah, I think that's probably true. It's a big gap. It is. Yeah, it is. Although it's very funny.
Are you awful to work with on this book now?
Well, it's funny. It's like, I was saying this. It's funny. I guess I'm not announcing what it is, but Jonathan and I are writing something together right now that is so much fun. And crazily, I think it's the first time that we are credited together. It's weird to have been working for so long together on so many books.
Yeah, because you do a lot of things. The X books kind of really bled over each other, didn't they?
It has to be wrong. Like, I have to be wrong about that. There must be something else where it says written by a bunch of, it doesn't matter. But I'm one of those folks. I hope that it's always like when someone wants to co-write something with me, I'm not like, oh, they're trying to get the Gerry Duggan magic on their this stink on their business, huh? Like, I just want to write stuff to have fun. Like Dave Mandel and I wrote a feature script together that was just fun that we tried to sell. That he was going to go direct until Julia called him to go showrun Veep. So I was like,
that?
Adios, and go with, and I'm very grateful that I'll have this wonderful show now to watch and root for you on. But it was about fake doctors. It was about a medical supply company that was trying to save their business, and we were writing these conventions. I only mention this because we actually did become fake doctors ourselves to get into a medical convention to see how it was done. And Declan, there was so much quackery. So there was somebody that built like almost this human humidor. It was called it was lined with crystals. Like they were not splitting the atom at this place, but it was perfect for us because that's what we wanted. Like those are the experiences that in co-writing that I want, where I'm just like laughing my ass off. So that's what Jonathan and I are doing right now. We're laughing our asses off, and I think.
So how did this happen with This Ends Tonight? Then, like, what was the?
So those guys had all worked together on Seven Sons with Jay, and then they were friends of mine from a whiskey tasting group here in Los Angeles, and I've traveled a little bit with them. With Kelvin, we went to a bunch of Japanese distilleries right before COVID. Some of those pictures ended up in that photo book. And then Kelvin's a writer and a director too. He did a documentary on Dave Stevens that I thought was wonderful. And then he's also now working on a TV show about the Japanese whiskey business called Distilled to Perfection. So it's, again, just trying to find folks that you like having fun with and then doing something cool. Like one of those guys from that same patio was taking his business to New Zealand, and he moved from Los Angeles to New Zealand and was going to bring a film business there. And he said, Gerry, it would really be helpful if I could take some IP. And I said, yeah, of course. I have something that might be wonderful for you. It could be a feature. It could be a TV show. It has a pedigree. He walked away with Infinite Horizon just on a handshake, but he's actually now like been able to, just from being cool and simpatico, he's gotten traction on that again, which is hilarious. Like, so again, the idea that we bump into people, creative people, you drive well with someone, what's the harm in a handshake deal? Infinite Horizon was published on a handshake at Image with Eric Larson back in the day at a convention between me and Phil. So you just want to find people that you have fun with and find people that you think that you can make something creative with that will help nurture what it is you're trying to bring into the world. And then you want to pay them back by being loyal and being on time and going out and working as hard as you possibly can for it.
So was it a thing that they were working on that they like asked you to help out on, or like, because they'd worked with Jay before, or, because Jay, any creative thing takes time and effort, and to sign up for a creator-owned thing is as you know, it's a bloody train. You've to assemble a train, assemble the tracks, put the coal in the train. I forget how trains work now. I don't, but it's a lot of work.
Irish trains are really different.
I'm going by Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning. That's how trains work.
It's a great question. Yeah, Jay liked working with them. Jay, obviously, Image is still the best place to publish and independent creator-owned comic books. And Eric had Jay and Robert and Kelvin's trust. And so we just started talking about what do we want to see Jay draw, and asking Jay, what do you want to see draw? And, there is a fantasy element buried deep within the first issue.
Looks great.
Oh my God. And Jay
when that kicks in, it looks beautiful.
I mean, and Jay was like, I miss drawing fantasy. And it's as simple as that, as going like, I know how to make this very down to earth, like, because there is it's an action comic with its 2 feet on the ground, or 1 foot in someone's face and 1 foot on the ground. It's beautiful, even when it's deadly and bloody. And then all of a sudden on a page turn, the world turns upside down in a great way that only a Jay Lee comic can do for you. And so it just was a privilege to be able to bring that out and help bring that into the world. As a writer of these things, I feel more often than not like a midwife or an air traffic controller. Hopefully not one at Newark, but you're I'm trying to get these thoughts and dreams out of my head into someone else's head, and then out of that head and into a page. And there is a wizardry to it. There is an alchemy to it. Sometimes it works better than others, but when you find those collaborators, that make that thing that you're imagining even better, I think that's why I work with so many of the same folks over and over, because I've got a tried and true path. It's like that trickle of water, formed a tributary that became a river. It's easy, I know, but I also really like being able to surprise folks, and I hope we are going to surprise some folks with this ends tonight. It's not a paint by numbers revenge tale, and it will challenge some folks, and I don't expect. I definitely, have you ever heard that David Bowie advice where you're supposed to swim out just a little bit further than your feet could touch? And so that felt like I checked that box on this one. I said, oh, I really love this, and it might not be for everyone, but I don't care, and there was, I was thinking a lot about David Lynch while we were making this too. For various reasons. And so there is this like dream-like quality to some of this, where you sort of wonder, how did I get from one thing to another? There is a flow to it, but that's what I loved most about it. It's
I think especially on an image book, you need, because there was, when I was doing Old Dog and I was like writing some stuff, I remember thinking, I got to push this further. Like, this is an image book. If I'm not pushing myself outside my comfort zone a little, then what's the point? Because it's very easy to kind of fall in within the patterns of doing, say, like a work for hire book or something. So like, I mean, it's good, because also the temptation to play it safe is in creator owned too,
Yes.
Like people like X, and give them X, so that if you give them Y, they might not like it. But if you're not trying X and Y, then you could just end up putting yourself in a box.
Yeah. 100%. There's not a quicker path to shaking your audience than giving them what you think they want.
Mm-hmm.
You have to help fill I would like to think, in a perfect world, every creator-owned comic, especially, you're bringing like some spackle to the world, and you're filling in a hole that, for something that didn't exist, that you wanted to exist. With all of my image stuff, I wholeheartedly, hand on a Bible, gun to my son's head, believe all of that to be true. Like those are books that didn't exist, that I want to see exist, that I adore exist.
Like you didn't just put out like Deadpool, the image comic, which arguably might have done great. Who knows? Or it might have just, died a death. And like, it's a hard. I mean, do you? I'll wrap it up soon, I promise, because I could just keep asking questions all day.
I love catching up. So
is creator owned stuff the way to push against? Not against, but like you do have some safety to try new things with creator owned that maybe you don't have work for hire. And is that like, do you like that balance, or does work for hire help your creator owned and vice versa?
Look, I love it, but I also gotta tell you, I think you have to be as indelible. my other Declan is home. Hang on one second.
Does he have some mail?
Yeah, he's going to get the mail. Hang on one second. I think, you must swing as hard in the big two as you do in creator-owned comics. I think, if the most important name on a Hulk comic to me is still my name on the cover. I can't make you not a fan of the Hulk. I can just make you not a fan of me. So in all of these things, you want to be, you want to blow everyone's hair back as much as you can, because playing it safe in any of those spaces is like a critical mistake, I think. But that's just me.
And do you this is kind of a career thing, and again, I ask because we've always talked about stuff like this, and I think you're so smart about it. But do you have a strategy for how much creator-owned you'll put out as opposed to how much work for hire? I mean, I think in most cases nobody does, because you don't know what's going to come your way, and you don't I think. Yeah. For example, I was doing just creator-owned. I was doing Old Dog and Time for Time, and then Alien popped up. So I was full-time creator-owned, basically part-time writing Alien, which was crazy. Yeah. And then, the creator-owned stuff didn't hit as hard as I would have liked. It did well, but I would have liked it to hit harder. So I kind of switched gears. But Thundercats popped up, and that wasn't expecting to be. Maybe I think it was going to be 10, 12 issues or something. And it turned into a whole thing. And then Terminators. And I ended up becoming more of a full-time writer, writing and drawing Mystique for Marvel. Right. That was totally work for hire. No creator owned at all, really, except an anthology. Now, that wasn't a plan necessarily. I thought I'd take the gear off creator owned a little bit, try and make some money on work for hire. But it ended up turning way more than I meant to. And now I'm in a place where I'm up pretty much only doing work for hire, and I'm I need to put out something of my own. What next year will be the earliest, but that's a reactive plan, not a wide plan of my world domination. Do you think that way? Do you have the luxury to be able to plan that far ahead?
I try to plan far ahead, but I've had, just life stuff pop up where, I've had to just position things. And, but I wouldn't beat yourself up over not having the master plan, because, honestly, being able to make your living in comics, I tell everyone that's breaking in, I was be prepared for many years of this is your night job. You're asking for a second. It will be number one in your heart and number 3 on the call sheet, maybe, or number 2 if you're lucky. And then eventually, if you're really lucky and good, it will be the only thing that you're doing. And so for me, with the creator-owned stuff, I think I come at it now with much more of a business plan than I used to, where I'm okay, how are we keeping the lights on for everyone? What is, and I'm working purely, on spec. I'm not having there's no upfront money for my services in creator-owned. But I think it's very important to be present. To like you said, you didn't anticipate Thundercats. You didn't necessarily anticipate then going, oh my gosh, now I'm writing and drawing for myself, which is such a unique thing that I love that we have that book. I love any time that you're writing and drawing for yourself.
Thanks, man.
But I think you just are open to it, and whether you now you're feeling like you have an itch to scratch, but I think you're going to be more nourished. You've sort of cleared the system of some work for hire, of some things, of having a lot of stakeholders and having notes. And then it's okay, what am I going to do where I'm, alone in a forest, and I think life has ebbs and flows, and I think our creativity should too.
That's a very Zen way of looking at it.
I will say,
you were the writer of Zenpool, so
I was, but I will say so much of the stuff that I've said goodbye to so many family over the last year that actually the way that I think that I am way more relaxed now about this stuff. As important as it is, I say, oh, okay, that's just my work life. That's comics, and I think we have to, I definitely took some time off and just focused on me. And I think the work hopefully will also be improved for that. I hope. Maybe. Only time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, I would say in the last few years the same too. Like, getting mowed by real life. Our realities are getting mowed by reality. Like, it's not a bad thing really either. It kind of centers you in some ways. It's not all bad, at least. But I'm gonna leave you alone, man. Like, you've talked to me for ages, but I do want to show this.
Oh, look at that!
So this is written by you, Kelvin Mao, Robert Wyndham, and illustrated by Jay Lee, colored by June Chung.
That's exactly right.
Don't show too much of it, but like, this is what I was talking about earlier. Like Jay's got some really interesting. I was with this. I'm pointing at the screen. Can you not see me point at my own screen?
The panel layout's really interesting. Yep.
Like, I mean, and in a way that wouldn't normally be to my taste, but like, it's very clear. It's very clear where your eye goes. And like, sorry, that's a spread, but I'm actually Jay's. I'll stop there. I won't show any more than that. But Jay's been the cover artist on a little book called Thundercats, and like, him and June together, beautiful, beautiful covers. Like, so to get to see actual storytelling pages again is fantastic.
It's such a joy to when these pages were coming in. Every email is just a joy, and I gave Jay the same authorship that I give all my artists. I said, Jay, here's a version of doing it. And oftentimes the sequences are a little different, and they are much better for his authorship over that. He's been at this longer than I have. So I really, again, a thrill to do it. It has a big curveball in there that I love. It's
when I saw it, I was like, "Ooh!" Like, it's beautiful.
It's Jay at his most Jay, and the three of us. I'm sorry, Kelvin and Robert and I were baking these stories together, and then each one of us took the lead on the scripting of an issue. And I think issue 3 is my favorite for the way that it wraps everything up in this crescendo of violence. It's just so much fun.
And so it's a planned, like, it's a maxi series, or you have an end in mind?
Yeah, we have an end in mind. We're going to run July, August, September, and then we'll have a nice big fat trade out of it with some extras. It's a story we might revisit, we might not, but not everyone's making it out of this story, so not everyone will be available for a sequel. Okay, but I would do more with this group again in a heartbeat if that were to come to pass. I also have some show and tell when you get a moment.
What have you got?
So I've been to Japan now twice. One of the first time pre-COVID with the distillery tour, I got to visit Chichibu, my favorite distillery, my favorite distiller, and I was always popping my head into comic shops looking for all sorts of whatever might have been interesting. So this is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in Japan.
Wow, that's savage.
It's so cool, Declan. They have like this high gloss. It's a trade paperback, but it's a high gloss cover, savage. and then that's the book that with like a sort of a mono red scale. The back of the book has like a sort of an ad that runs through that I kept.
Okay.
They made that the back cover, and then there's a really fun thing that I wanted to show you. That is, oh shit, is it in here? Some of these books have this. they have a little who's who, not just of the characters, but of the creators. But anyway, a lot of fun. I was thrilled to see. Oh yeah, here it is. These are like little inserts that they did. And so we're all sort of name checked in here. I don't know where they got the, but this is like also annotations. It's like we got like the Alan Moore League of Extraordinary Gentlemen treatment on the annotations. And then I just think it's so cool to see your art and your storytelling exist. That again, an immortal.
It's like seeing it in a whole new light. Like
it's really neat.
That's class. Yeah.
Anyway, I tried to find you one. This is my copy. I did. I bought the last one at the store. I buy when you fly.
Yeah, I wouldn't pick up one for anybody else. I just look after my story. Look after number one, Gerry. That's class. That's a lovely way to wrap it up too, man. You've always been just like one of the best people to talk to every time. And
well, you're too kind. You need to talk to better people, Declan.
Well, I didn't say. I wasn't suggesting that I was talking to good people. Just in the realm of things.
Look who's here.
He's so. Little thing's mouth.
So these are my Declan socks, which we have a currency. Luna helps me pick up the joint. So she picks up. She knows she's going to get a treat out of that. Yes.
Let's get her a present.
Yeah. She's a sweet. Right. She's my writing partner now. She farts half as much as Brian. She contributes less.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look at that face, though. And wags her tail just as much as Brian too.
Yes, that's right. She's got a lot more hair. All right, my friend. Thank you for helping me push this ends tonight. Will you be in New York? Are we going to have fun times in New York together?
Yeah, let's get a good steak dinner thing again. That was savage. That place you took me to one time.
Did I take you to Keen's?
Yes, you took me to Keen's once. And you took me somewhere else with Phil another time. It wasn't Keen's, but that was class. Yeah, it's like that.
I know all the spots. Keen's was a place my old man took me to before we'd go to New York Rangers games.
It was beautiful.
Have you in and out? Yeah, it's such a cool spot. If you're in New York, you want to go to a chop house. It's been there forever.
I think I was watching what's that show with Paul Giamatti? Billions. I think there was a scene where he was in there. I'm like, I've been there. But anyway, thanks a million, man.
Of course.
Let's hold on for a second.
Of course.
Let's hold on for a second so that the thing sinks. But thanks for making the time, man. I appreciate it.
Oh my God, are you kidding? Hey, Declan, thank you. I really appreciate you coming out and helping us promote the book. We'll see you this summer. I'll be at San Diego. I'll see you in New York. Aces.
All right, man. I'll catch you later.
All right, take care, bud.
You've been listening to Tape Deck, brought to you by myself, Declan Shalvey, and produced by Jamie Wood. Please like if you like, subscribe if you really like, and share whether you like it or not. Visit declanshalvey.com for more information about my work, art sales, and to sign up for Declarations, my bi-weekly newsletter.